You're listening to the Veteran Etc. podcast, as there's always more to be said about a veteran. Join your host, Mike Kim, a veteran, ex-monk, seasoned war trauma therapist, and writer, as he shares his years of research in veteran readjustment culture and the meaning of warrior life. Now, here's your host, Mike Kim.
We are Veteran Etc. and incredible guy tonight and hosting this great show with Mr. Angel Fernandez. And I just feel as though it's important for folks to know about different lives in regards to the vet world, as well as to know different things that affect the vet world on many different levels, because in the end, it's society that we're all a part of, and that's important. And by the way, our show kind of says there's more to say about a veteran. So Angel, how's your night so far?
It's been good, Mike. Nice to see you. We've been talking about this for the longest, and we always talk, and it's wonderful. I'm excited. This was more important for me to be here tonight with you than anything else. I had other events and everything, but when it comes to veterans or my fellow brothers and sisters, I just put everything to the side and focus on that. So that I'm doing great.
Well, I appreciate it. I didn't mean to have a Charlie Bravo night on you, but I did, because I figured that as far as really kicking off these different episodes, I definitely wanted you involved because you're connected with a lot of people I love. And as I tell other folks in society, I'm always saying, gosh, not one veteran is exactly the same, but we all share one thing in common, and that's a deep love for our country.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that. And I mean, we come from the same circle. We know Rudy, Ray, a couple other guys, and we initially didn't know each other, but we knew of each other, and then we got finally to meet each other. And I think the bond is as veterans, that's what keeps us tight all the time.
And just to say this, unlike other podcasts, this isn't like a veteran military bromance going on here. I
Yeah.
mean, we're like about the fellowship, but at the same time, we have serious lives. So this talk, this conversation, like it wasn't just set up because I know Angel and I really respect them in many ways and in on so many levels, and because of the connection with other people, I'm going to bring him on the show. No, that's not it. This show specifically focuses on veteran and military culture and veteran readjustment culture in particular. So it's kind of looking at, what are veteran lives before the military, during the military, and after the military, and what are the different things shared and produced by that veteran or that civilian that's tied to the veteran terrain. And so it's a great honor because I just know you're a veteran entrepreneur. Black Sheep Training is something that is pretty impressive as far as the different people that you're connected with and the things that you do. And so I was just wondering if you can share with our audience a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Black Sheep Training. And this episode is going to focus on Angel, but also his connection to the veteran community and also the different things he's done outside of the veteran community that truly honors the veteran community. So, Angel, let's hear it.
Yeah, well, my life it was pretty rough. I was the oldest, first. Well, I'm gonna say second generation Puerto Rican. My family, my father and mother came from Puerto Rico to Connecticut in '63. Of course, I was born in '69, and I had I'm not gonna say wonderful. I had a wonderful childhood in meaning of how I learned tradition and culture, but there was something else missing. And as I was growing up, I've learned where my family came from Spain, and they've been serving the crown since back in the 1700s, as far as the history could go. Then there was a hiccup in my life. I got into a little bit of trouble, and then I was a young dad, teen, and I needed to do something. So I joined the service and went into the Navy. I was in Desert Storm. I call that the 100-hour victory in 30 years of misery, because even though it was short, but it was so impactful at my age, what I saw, that it scarred my mind forever. You know, as much as you don't want to think about it, it's there. Did a stint in the Army, was in Latin America, and then I got out and I was in the reserves, individual ready reserves. And then back in 2000, my old commanding officer called me up and he said, "Hey, we're starting up a unit. It's an anti-terrorist unit because of the bombing of the Cove." So that was in December 7th. And that's an important date if you think about it, December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. So I got the phone call, and his name is Admiral Quinn. And back then he was Captain Quinn. And I told him, "Hey, I got to talk to the Admiral," meaning my wife at that time, that to make a decision. So that was December 7th. And then November 21, I was back on active duty. So the guys in MEPS, it's a joke because when I showed up in MEPS, I had presidential orders getting activated and clearances reinstated, the whole 9 yards. And I came in as a rated MA. Traditionally, to be a Master of Arms in the Navy, you had to be second class and above. But because I was so out for so long, from 95 to 2000, I lost rank. So that was the only way to bring me back in, with some kind of rank. So I ended up in the Mobile Security Force. I was an anti-terrorist unit, which it started back in 2002. But then I ended up in Greece for September 11th. I was one of the key members of they gave protective service detail to General Franks, September 11th. A lot of us don't forget that day. That day it's like our parents remember when Kennedy got killed.
Mhm.
So, so did there 2 years, and then I ended up being liaison for all the Spec Ops unit that came to Crete, Greece, going to hop over to Afghanistan, and then I ended up over there. And it was so interesting because after I left Greece, that's when the unit was critical to get put together, because naval assets were without security. The Marine Corps fast teams, their mission got changed dramatically at that time. And then the SEAL teams were doing some of the missions. So mobile security, basically, we picked up the slack for everybody else and doing that. We escorted subs through the Panama Canal. We did other missions, and we transported a lot of high value detainees. And we had Raven teams that flew around with high value personnel. I mean, it was pretty interesting, my career. And then I ended up getting sent to Iraq numerous occasions. My last time was 2007, got hurt real bad. And then I ended up in Connecticut, in Groton, and that's where my whole career of training people and teaching how terrorists think and their state of mind. And then my job was to condition those sailors to go into harm's way. It was not an easy job.
Let me interrupt you here.
Yeah.
It's very important, excuse me, for my audience or our audience, because I don't think a lot of podcasts, I mean, you'll have like, these other shooters out there, and they're just like, they'll talk about, this is how things went down and this is how this went. But we never get on a lot of these podcasts information about, let's say, what you've experienced and what you've been trained to do. Again, this doesn't minimize other people, but I just wanted all of us to know, as far as the terrorist mind, I mean, I was involved in civil affairs, tactical civil affairs, so I was involved in hearts and minds, but that's coming from a different angle, much more non-kinetic. I was a non-kinetic specialist, whereas you're probably more, I know you're more into the kinetic world, and that's to educate folks, non-kinetic would be more like on soft skills, that doesn't mean not being exposed to danger, but using, a lot of work in villages and just much more kind of like softer approaches towards working with the civilian populace, whereas kinetic targeting would focus more on using different levels of violence. I notice I say different levels because it's not automatically going in and rushing into a building and kicking down doors and all that kind of stuff. That's just to educate folks. But let me hear your perspective on all of that, as well as your perspective regarding what you mentioned earlier, because a lot of people don't understand maybe the terrorist mind, right? And we're not doing this to advocate one group or another or get caught up in any type of like debate, but from your perspective, let's hear it from you.
I mean, and and it's interesting because even my closest friends that we talk a lot, and I had to dive into what drive the people to commit terrorist act. And so what I've learned, and I had to teach our young men and women, especially the dog handlers. I trained a lot of the dog handlers on the Navy side of the house, and I lost a near dear friend of mine, which I have to live with that guilt, but we'll touch on that. But what I learned, and the people weren't getting, that Southwest Asia is not actually the Middle East, and Southwest Asia, it's always been tribal, and the people were tribal, and the way they understood was by force. And if you do not demonstrate, it's almost like you being the alpha dog. If you don't go there with the alpha dog, they will overrun you. They'll get in as a pack and they'll run you over. And their religious ideology, we had to learn how the whole roots of religion to the way they were teaching us is everybody came basically from the same tree, but it just went to different branches. We learned, Hebrew, Islam, and Christianity is the three major ones, the three main ones. And then we started learning how in the Islam, they have the Hadith, which there's over 3,000 that still haven't deciphered yet to this day.
So interpretations, you mean?
Interpretation,
Right.
correct.
That's right. So
correct.
When you're talking about Judaism, and I know I get
Yeah.
it at times confused, Judaism and Hebrew, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, there's many different interpretations of text.
Correct.
And you're saying that there can be a multitude of different interpretations, but not
Correct.
only that, with that understanding of force, did you also find, and this isn't in any way to water things down, but did you also find that use of force or that type of alpha behavior, was that in many ways in all aspects of life, or was that something that was maybe tied to certain cultural practices? Because at times I would find that, there's no Walmart, there's no sheriff in town that's gonna, that you call them up and something happens down the street, you call them up and they're gonna come by and send out a team and help you out. There's no water well in every village.
Correct.
There's also like different nomads, and I'm not belittling anybody, but the Bedouins
Correct.
are nomads, and there's also other groups, as well as there's like a lot going on regarding nomadic living. And so do you think that was also something?
And that's the mentality I had to get the guys into, that you had to have more of that nomadic thinking and attitude to get to them. Because again, I finally realized after all these years, now I understood why Saddam Hussein ruled with an iron fist, because of his tribal, and he's in charge of the tribe, and that's how he kept everybody in check. I don't agree with it, but that's been going on since before Jesus Christ was around. So, and then that's when you have a certain sect that took the religion, and they did nothing no different than David Koresh did with the Bible when he brainwashed the people.
Mm.
So, and you have those where you got ISIS and you got, the Taliban's, and it's because they start twisting it to their interpretation what's going to benefit out of them to control people. So, and we had to train the guys how to do that, and then how to deal with certain populace in the area. Some village imams were good with you. Some of them were assholes. It's like that. They usually want to trade stuff with you. It was crazy. Because we had to live part of the time with them, and every time when I used to come back from a task, and I used to come back and I had a debrief and tell the guys this was going on, like certain things that were putting like pieces of meat laced with something to either throw off or kill the dogs and stuff like that. They hate dogs. You know that. They don't like dogs. Sometimes just the mere presence of dogs, we got to point across real quick, or they spill the beans real quick. And then we ended up in Fort Sus up in northern Iraq, and in the Amulaya up north by the Iranian border, and we had the Kurds over there. So our job was hard because we had to keep the Kurds from killing the Iraqis and vice versa and everything, because there's a bad history with the Kurds and the Iraqis. So there was a lot of things, serve with NATO forces, which I train and dealt with other countries and pass along information, training techniques.
What would you say is the biggest thing that you would train troops in, whether NATO or foreign nationals that were allies? What was the biggest things that you would teach? And I just think that's great to know because of your experience.
So it was basically a lot more about respect and understanding and culture, and understanding where they came from. And you got to think about it. They have been subjected to this kind of treatment forever. So sometimes you had to flip the switch and be freaking very almost savage with them, but then at the same time you could give them that gentle hand, hey, we're not here. We're here to help you out to build your country and everything, and show you there's a different light, which we was accomplishing in Afghanistan, the same attitude also. And in Afghanistan, it was more brutal there because it'd been a war more longer than Iraq. Iraq, it wasn't as destroyed. If you look historically, Afghanistan was a very vibrant country and culture and everything. And then that's where the whole religious fanatics that started flipping on the people and stuff like that. And that's what we taught the guys. We had to tell them, hey, respect goes both ways. But you know what? If you disrespect me, there's consequences you're going to pay for that. And sometimes you have to be harsh. And us American, I've learned that, like when we travel all the countries, we go over there with a badass attitude. We're American. We're going to do whatever we want. And then you wonder why people hate us in some countries. So we was teaching our guys how to psychologically win them to get our jobs done and come home in one piece.
What was one thing, one trait, or one aspect of that you truly resonate with? Something very basic.
We went out there a couple of times. So we was in Buka. We got attacked all the time. We had riots all the time and stuff like that. And there, my attitude was very different compared when we went out to the northern parts and everything. A lot of almost winning the hearts and mind. One thing we did was giving a family. I was a little scavenger with my guys. And I came up with grains. So like that, we was teaching them, hey, you could grow stuff and you could do things differently. So it was different there. And then, even in Afghanistan, we was showing them the same thing because they rely on opium. Opium was the biggest thing, the driver for them. But one thing that resonated was one iman that I learned from when I was in Desert Storm. I hated anything that had to do with the culture. And imagine, I was only from a distance from that war and impacted me. And I was younger, I was 19 years old. I was younger. And now that I'm older and more educated, so I kind of understood, sitting down and drinking tea and listening to them and they listening to me. So it came out to they love history. And me being descendant of Spaniards, I told them I'm descendant also of Arabic, because if you look at southern Spain and northern Africa, it was conquered by the Ottoman Empire and all that stuff. So I have the Arabic blood, and that was the only way I could relate to them and have some kind of connection where it made things a lot easier.
Right, right.
And
And when Angel says Ottoman, he's talking about that, yeah, that in the Turkish area, there was
correct,
influence to have the different the caliphate influence
correct,
the Spanish, the North African Spanish side. So the control was like in what is now Turkey, but also Ottoman Empire, but also a certain caliphate. I forgot the name,
correct.
but they
Yeah,
were coming from there. So I follow you all the way on that. And also and finish what you were saying, but also, this thing of, because I didn't just want to speak about like a soft approach, but anything, and this isn't to get specific, but anything you want to leave us in regards to a aspect of a hard approach, and just any useful information regarding that our audience, our society are just not exposed to, because we're just caught up with Fox News or CNN, and that's about it. But finish what you were going to say, and then please add to what I'm just asking you.
so that was the more soft approach, the hard kinetics that sometimes you had to use some kind of force. And that's something, and it's funny because everybody, when they hear Iraq or Afghanistan, SEAL teams and Rangers and MARSOC, all the high speed units. I'm like,
Everybody's got to wear a beret.
yeah,
Talk about it when they talk about it in
yeah, they
society.
talk, and it's funny because I was in joint forces. People don't realize this war, it was all hands on deck. It's a different mission. Like myself, I was in Task Force Gunslinger, where we deal with a lot of high value detainees up by the Iranian border, or we supported the SEAL teams by when they brought the detainees, and we process them and process all the evidence and stuff like that. Or we was doing a lot of more detainee operations with the Army, Marines also, and Air Force. We had Air Force too. And we got into firefights, and unfortunately, the Navy and Marine Corps, I think, is the only branch that even to get a car, they got to see you basically bleed out before you got a car. And the biggest running joke that we have, hey man, I just don't have to be MD to get a cab or combat action badge or something like that. So, but we did some significant things out there. I ran into some Marines, and there was a firefight towards a little bit after Phantom Fury, and I ran into that Marine a few years ago, 5 years ago, in a bar, and he was talking about, yeah, man, some freaking sailors that pulled up. They opened up with a 50 cal. We like, hey, thanks a lot. We didn't think Navy was gonna bail us out, and I'm like, shit, hold a second, and I'm like, I show him pictures. This is me at that time. He was like, this is me. I was like, holy cow. Back then, he was a corporal. And so we hugged each other and everything. And there's certain stuff that we done over there, all branches, that not to.
Can you maybe fill me in and others on this? Like, so the impression and the typical narrative would be, oh, this is like, coming into this Band of Brothers and all of this stuff. And yeah, there's an aspect of that. But at the same time, I'm also sensing that there was something a little bit more than that, right? Because that's a very unlikely thing to come across someone connected from the past.
We, and the way that conversation started with him, my buddy Greg, he was in the teams. He's like, hey, I might be a SEAL, but my boy Angel, he's seen more action than me as an operator. And so that Marine, he started talking about yeah, he says, you know what, I didn't respect sailors at one time, but then this happened to me. And I was like, hey, I remember that day. You guys were pinned down and we pulled up. You guys were in the ditch and we pulled up in our Humvee. We had an up armor, and our up armor was fucking spare parts from other shit that we found. And they were in a tight situation, and we bailed them out. And that night, it wasn't just a hug and say, "Hey, yeah, we were there." We cried,
Mhm.
because that day we didn't know what was the outcome
Right.
until we won.
Right.
So and ever since that day, it's funny. We don't talk every day, but he'll hit me up. The typical Marine. Hey, blah 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 blah, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You guys are crayon eaters, and we laugh at, hey, how's the family and stuff like that, and it's crazy because I've run into guys because of what I did in theater, and not just me. What the Navy did. We ran into a lot of guys, and we only knew details, not the details that people were there. We knew, and that's how we verify stuff. And it was one fight for everybody. It didn't matter what branch of service. Everybody stepped up to the plate, and like rivalry that we are with each other's branches. But when it's time to get down, take care of business. The biggest compliment that we have from a colonel, I can't even remember his name. He dubbed us with the name Devil Dolphins because in his eyes, we prove ourselves to him.
That's outstanding. Now, let me ask you this. I know you've evolved, and our guests on Veteran, etc., is always, our guests are always kind of breaking the mold and everything. And I know you've returned, and I know you've been recognized, in regards to a career in law enforcement and also with Sheepdog. I was just wondering, before we get into looking at some of the humanitarian work that you've been involved with, just some information regarding that, because that's kind of like interesting.
Yeah. So how everything started was I know Ray, a friend of ours. It started with the Hurricane Maria. We brought a level of expertise in Puerto Rico that it wasn't seen before, but we got creative. And what I mean expertise, you have all this big NGO entities with a lot of money, and they couldn't solve one issue, and that was water. And there was the war fighters in the western part of Puerto Rico, and then they used to call us the water dogs back then before we became Veterans Response. So people knew us as the water dogs. And what happened was I worked with Ray. We stayed up for 2 weeks trying to get flights, and then Ray spoke to a company called the Divi system, which they use in Africa to purify water. And me and Ray, we looked at each other and said, hey, man, the water, we're talking about what plastic bottles will do to environmentally to the island. So there was a lot of things that, that we planned. And then when we got on the airplane, that was, when we were boots in the ground, we were kicking doors down and cutting the red tape from the government because we knew how to talk to certain people, mostly Army. South Command was there. And I knew a couple of people in there that opened the doors. And basically they were giving us missions to go. We started at my town where the majority of my family, they're farmers. So we grabbed water from the swimming pool and we made in about 4.5 hours, we made 250 gallons of drinkable water, and we passed it around. And then the word was getting around real quick, throughout the island. Hey, they call us the water dogs. We didn't even have a name back then, just Veterans Response. And but they knew us as the water dogs. And as we went out through the island, using our skills and logistics and planning, everything that we learned in the military, we put it to play for this. And we were more organized because we have our life experience and our careers that helped us do all this planning. And through me in the gun industry, Black Sheep, I was able within hours raised over $7,000. People donated $7,000 cash, plus other stuff that we needed, solar power, battery chargers, lights, and stuff like that. Everything that was not going to impact the environment, we did that. Because we all know from being a battlefield, stuff like that, it causes a carbon footprint, and there's pollution, it impacts the environment heavily. And so we use our experience from the war of how to avoid from that happening also. One of the biggest things that in Maria, and we was in a place called Las Marias. We went, people were very hesitant, very mountain people. They would not touch the water. So we were actually drinking the water, showing them the water, which had high levels of bacteria. So by the time we shock it and treat it and went through the filter system as an end product into the bottles of water they were bringing, we were the first one to drink it and show them that, hey, it's all right. We drinking it, it's all right. And that became our trademark. Was actually, we was the first one to drink the water before the public. There was a lady in there, which I didn't know, and NPR got attached to us, that got embedded with us. And that the lady, which they did a big documentary, she was pregnant, I think it was 4 months, and she was drinking only soda. So she was about to lose the baby because she wasn't drinking water. So she was scared because she seen people get sick and die from the bacteria of the water. And so I spoke to her and everything, and I told her, you have to drink water. And she drank water, and she took about 20 gallons with them. We had bags with them, and they took it. I was reported a year and a half later that she was pregnant, and the baby is called Maria, and the baby survived that. So that's something that the group, we were very proud of, that we saved lives out there. We saw a lot of destruction, and I mean, it was quite an experience. The earthquakes, we went over there too with our connection, because already Puerto Rico already knew who we were, so it was easier for us to go down there and assist people and everything. So that was our way of giving back to society. We've seen so much death and destruction during the war that we wanted to do something that wasn't about death and destruction. And that was why it was very important to us. And to this day, right now, as individuals, we help and support certain groups that's in Ukraine right now also, which is critical. I know if I didn't have my responsibilities and everything, I think I'll be out there in the battlefield. But when you're older, a wiser warrior, sometimes you can be more effective helping from behind the lines.
I'd want to ask you that question because I think you have a lot to be said, and this isn't something to dissuade someone or to promote someone in doing this, but what do you think was something immediate that was a sign for you that said kind of hold back? Because I know a lot of veterans, we focus a lot on impulse, because we do feel, though we have control, certain things can get us to give immediate assistance. I know I got COVID in the midst of not saving, but intervening with a trans woman getting attacked in Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah,
Prostitution and everything is rampant, and all kinds of other things.
yeah,
And, I didn't care. There was a human being in need, and I ended up getting COVID, getting close and separating a bunch of people. I'm not a hero. You don't see yourself as a hero. You just see yourself. I'm speaking for you because I know you, and you can add on to this, but you responded, right? And I responded, and I just wanted you to share a little bit of that before we get into Sheepdog, because I think it's important in this age of kind of volunteering and doing good work. At the same time, I heard you say something about wisdom, and I think you have a lot to share, and it's good for our audience to know.
Well, a lot of us, like a lot of us, our impulse is Ukraine. The people need help. Their military need help. And a lot of our impulses, and believe me, a week before it got hot over there, like super hot, I was getting phone calls and everything. And I said, look, I know where to send people to, but do you really want to do that. There's other ways to help people in Ukraine. And what I told a lot of my friends, and I got a lot of them over there right now, and I love them and respect them for it.
Yes.
But there's a consequence that you're gonna have to pay when you come back home, meaning psychologically. I don't want to go through that again. I live in dark periods of my life. For example, Desert Storm. I was drinking a fifth of Bacardi every day for almost a year, and just that little bit of exposure, it screwed me up. Then I go to Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been to Bosnia also.
Hmm.
It took a lot for me to readjust in society, and it's still hard. It's still hard for me to adjust with society, and I don't want to go back into the battlefield, and then what I've won and accomplished so far, I don't want to destroy it again.
I'm stopping you right there because we could go on, and I want to do
Yeah,
eventually a show on what you just said, why I'm getting aroused, in a positive way here, or animated in a positive way here, is when you just share that. That's what I wanted to give how could I say? I wanted to give that view to one of these intellectual. I'm not about speaking bad about different groups, but I
yeah,
shared the interest of speaking about what you spoke about, because I kind of had the same type of reaction, and I gave the response that you were talking about when I was asked to go over to Ukraine. And I'm just glad that, it's not right or wrong. You're just giving a response, and I gave a response, and I wanted that to be shared on this intellectual podcast that, we all know I'm the hippie of all hippies, in uniform and out of uniform. But at the same time, I love my country. I have a lot of things that I share as Americans with everyone. But I just felt that it was closed down. Like there was an interest, and then they never showed that show. They didn't want to do the show. They didn't even respond to me. And it's a very popular show within the intellectual kind of liberal community,
yeah.
progressive community that I'm a part of. But I just feel as though there are certain issues that go beyond politics, that go beyond political parties and all that, but that are just human. And I appreciate what you shared, earlier.
And a lot of guys might not agree with me, but like I said, I'm an old warrior. I was fighting Desert Storm before some of these guys were even born, or they were in diapers. I seen the atrocities of drug interdiction. I seen the atrocities of Bosnia. I seen the stuff in Afghanistan, Iraq, other NATO countries that I've been to. I seen it, and when you're in the environment, your switch is turned on to that environment, and then your emotional switch is shut off. And when you come back to society and you're trying to readjust that switch, it screws you up, and that's the way I see it. Could I go over there to Ukraine and take care of business? Hell yeah, there's no problem with that. I could do
And
that, but
what
then
you're saying is the atrocity of war. You're not getting into,
correct,
you're just saying that,
correct,
right? Exactly.
correct.
So
and
please.
and that's the impactful part that I've learned through myself and seeing my other brothers, because as you know, I struggle. There's periods when I go dark and I don't say anything, but this is the period. Does it hurt that I sat for 24 hours in my recliner watching when everything kicked off, and I'm like ready to hit the button to say, yeah, I'm gonna go. Then I started thinking, okay, I got my oldest son is in the Marine Corps,
Hmm.
and he does this. I got my second oldest graduated from UConn, getting ready to go into the Navy to do the certain job. My
Hmm.
youngest one, who graduates in 2 weeks, is shipping out to the Navy to do a certain job in the intel world.
Wow.
So, and I'm like, and then I got two grandkids, and I said, and I'm gonna leave that and come back, and not there's nothing that's gonna guarantee me that I'm gonna come back in one piece. And if I do come back in one piece, mentally I'm gonna come back as a wreck. because over there, it just this the stuff that you see in World War II. You know, I seen people getting bodies thrown in pits just like in Bosnia, and I mean everything. Why destroy myself mentally and then come back here and then you have to live with that? I already got enough shit like it is to live with for the short period of exposures that I have, and including the job. So that's why I said there's other ways to serve and help the cause without ruining it. Because you go over there, you say, "Yeah, I need. That's my mission." Yeah, we all look for that mission every day that we need to, but it's at the you got to look at it like ORM, operational risk management. You know, the benefit outweighs the other factors. So, and that's what you got to look at as you get older. You start looking at that.
Right. And that's not to minimize what you're saying about, or how can I say it? It's not about, and I appreciate you for this. You're not like comparing other people's services, but I know you've been exposed numerous times, many hellacious type of situations, and your humility comes out. And I appreciate that, because the audience, again, in this show, I'm not afraid to make certain conclusions unless you correct me, which I'm open to, but we're having this great dialogue and nothing scripted, and getting your narrative and counter narrative about different lives, before, during, and after is very important, I think, for other people. I just really thank you for that. Let me ask you this, because on the show, I always ask folks about history. And I know we've had like different discussions regarding historical trauma and in regards to looking at, and this isn't just focusing on one group or one race or anything like that, but I always like to look at people and what they went through, because I know it didn't just show up last night, or it didn't just show up when we were in the war zone. But for example, my father, even though I'm a very hippie kind of guy, and I'm, maybe less, how could I say it? I'm less for intervention in Korea. My dad has mixed feelings about that. On one side, he's not down with it, but at the same time, he's up for it. But he's got his narrative that is in that I've inherited, right? My mom, the Dominican Republic, the US intervened in the Dominican Republic, 1965. All of these different things, they kind of impact you. And I was just wondering, because we've had interesting discussions regarding the unit from Puerto Rico, just because, it wasn't until Obama kind of like recognized them, and during the Korean War, and even they were involved in wars before then.
Yeah.
And I just want to talk a little bit about their legacy and like their impact, and what you felt about them, and just I think our audience could benefit from knowing a
Well,
little our dialogue.
it's kind of ironic that we're talking about that. The Borinqueniers, the 65th Infantry, the Puerto Ricans have been contributing to the U.S. military even before World War One, and then back in 1918, 1919, we became U.S. citizens. I was the deputy director of the Borinqueniers Historical Society in Connecticut. Another Marine, Dan Garcia, he tapped me, "Hey, I know your grandfather and your great uncle. My great uncle fought in Korea. My grandfather fought in World War." He said, "We're doing this." So we got real quickly. We were the silent ones that were behind the scenes. Were the new monument that got built in New Britain, Connecticut. That was our doing. And then we was there's a 5-war monument in Middletown, which I headed that project also to bring awareness of the 5 conflicts. And in Bosnia, even though we was there, NATO guys did suffer from what they saw there. But the the Borinqueniers are well known to the point where MacArthur said, if I have 5 battalions of Borinqueniers, I'll beat the Koreans back to China and the Chinese and also, but there was also a part of the history there where it almost got washed by the military, how they selected the soldiers based upon their skin color. So if you was a white Puerto Rican, you ended up in a white unit. If you was a black Puerto Rican, you ended up in a color unit or with an Asian unit, because that was segregation that was going on. Even though after World War II, they still had that going on. And that was something. Borinqueniers are one of the to this day, we're fighting to get a couple of guys to get the Medal of Honor. People don't know this. And a lot of Marines, I'm sorry, bust your bubble, but the Cholson Reservoir, the ones who got you guys that prevented an attack for you guys getting killed was the Borinqueniers. They the ones that covered the retreat of the Marines from the Cholson Frozen, from the reservoir, for them to get out. And the Borinqueniers took a heavy toll on that fight.
I want to add on to that because I dated someone deeply connected to General Aldman, who was part of MacArthur's chief, part of his staff, was the top advisor to MacArthur. And after the Incheon landing, things were going well. At the same time, unlike yourself and myself, being involved in, not saying that we're perfect, but being involved in having a knowledge of the area and all that was important as far as highly functioning. But like General Aldman did not understand the war in Korea, did not understand the civil war in Korea that already existed prior to the US involvement. And he just felt like throwing troops all over the place, including using air warfare, using napalm to hit civilians and military targets. But this incompetence of General Aldman, it's not to bash him, but for us to always learn the lessons from war. This incompetence and arrogance from a general who was supposed to be advising MacArthur properly made many mistakes, including the misuse of the Borinqueniers, because like you said, MacArthur knew of their hardcore reputation, but this General Aldman had issues not just with the Borinqueniers, but had history of problems leading African-American troops in Italy during World War II.
World War II.
Probably should have been promoted, for the Korean War. So that sets precedence as far as recognizing this is a very problematic type of leader, military leader, that shows the problems in warfare. And I say this because this is a show that also recognizes the power of culture. Let me just tell you, not ethnic type of culture, but cultural production, as far as our dialogue, your work in the society to promote the legacy of the Borinqueniers. This is part of the readjustment cultural work that I'm talking about. Mine was to research all of this and to verify what you've said, but also I went to see, well, was General Aldman, in any way empathetic? Well, I found, kind of like some tapes that dealt with General Aldman being interviewed in an oral history towards the end of his life. And he mentions none of this in any way, no remorse, at least from the information that I got. Now, I don't want to defame anyone, but I did not in those interviews get any type of understanding regarding his place, whereas I felt that the generals in Dien Bien Phu from the French paratroopers and French Foreign Legion, they felt, and the French media covered it, deep remorse for a lot of things that happened in their failures of leadership. So I just wanted to share that.
And General Aldman was one of the key ones in instrumenting the court-martials of a lot of Borinqueniers because of Smith Hill. As you know, that was a big battle there, and a lot of Borinqueniers are like, no, we're getting slaughtered and you want to keep sending us up there. So they, a lot of them ended up getting court-martialed.
Make distinct, because that's not an issue of cowardice. We're supposed to, as fighting men, abide by UCMJ and lawful orders. That wasn't my interpretation. That wasn't a lawful order.
Correct. And that's when he became the kind of the masculine, the guys from Puerto Rico by, we're not going to give you your diet of your pork and your rice. And you know what? They started taking off the Borinqueneers off the Jeeps. And he was trying to erase the history of them. When historically, that unit, again, they did her very impactful historical strategic battles over there that helped the United States. And that's why we keep that and alive and showing people. And like I say, my grandfather was with them, and my great uncle fought in Korea. Two of them fought in Korea, and they were part of that whole debacle of when the court martial went and everything. And if you I gotta let you borrow the video that I have of when they did the whole documentary, and you'll see my family, my uncles up there, and my grandfather. And I think that's where our blood comes from serving our country and doing our thing.
Yes, and there was a Puerto Rican gentleman who is very dear to me, Zenny's father. He served there in Korea and was in a grunt unit and saw a lot of things there. And, while he was alive, we were working at getting the VA to recognize some of this stuff. And he ended up dying, and some other guy we know are recognized, but he ended up passing away with that full recognition.
The full recognition, and
in regards to the help that he needed throughout many, many years, carrying those wounds of war, and he never received any type of the help he needed.
And a lot of them had the frostbite issue and everything.
That's right.
And there was a lot of stuff, and it just I come from a proud line of service to our country and being a warrior, but you learn to the humility. And that's how Black Sheep, my name of my company.
Yeah.
The name of my company, Black Sheep, that name came from because when I was in mobile security, was designated as the Black Sheeps. So we always outside the box. We didn't follow the rules, but we got the job done. So we were dubbed the Black Sheep. And that's who we are in the industry. We are the same way.
When you say follow, when you say following the rules, I want our audience to be aware, you're not saying a disregard of like order or anything like that. You're just saying practicality, just because I need to like inform our audience, because at times people get misunderstanding.
Yeah, when they hear
talking about we're not going to be shaving every day. You know what I mean?
When they hear Black Sheep, they refer to Pappy Boynton.
Yeah.
But no, it was because we always thought outside the box when it came to do missions and everything. The hardest missions, it was given to us. And again, because we was always thinking outside the box, we got creative on how to get the mission done and accomplished and stuff like that. A lot of officers didn't like it because they wanted you to stay scripted into the line of the books, and we like, well, you restricting us. We gotta go a little bit into the gray area to get a job.
Or understanding the tactical awareness.
Correct.
So that part of Black Sheep, can you share, because I know we're coming to a close here, but can you let people know some things about your company? Because I the way I understand your company, it's not some kind of Eric Prince operation.
No.
And I'm not trying to cause any type of trauma here. I want listeners to pay attention and to share this. But I'm not a shit stirrer, as they say. But I just know what you're all about, and just can you share a little bit about Black Sheep?
Basically Black Sheep, well, a lot of the stuff that we teach, we got students that come to us every year. All of our courses are not the same. Unfortunately, a lot of courses are being taught out there as cookie cutter. Everybody's teaching basically the same thing. They put their own little twist, and that's it. We teach based upon neuroscience. As you know, when we go and learn how to use the rifle, pistol in the military, especially the rifle, you spend 3 weeks and a half just to learn the rifle. So what we do is teach based upon neuroscience. The author of Mentoring and Building Shooters, Dustin Solomon, was my OIC. So that's where I learned that theory, and
Can
throughout
you
my
say a little
whole.
bit about that theory? That's interesting.
So that theory is the neuroscience. So what it is, the mind, you process so much information in a short period of time that it only captures little bits at a time, little blurbs. So what we do in an 8-hour period, we make sure that you get the key information and it stays programmed in your mind. So at the end of the course, when we put you through stress inoculation, it's not, you know, what people think. It's basically making you think as you are engaging in targets. And they see that because they're trying to process the information so quick, they see how they shoot an innocent bystander, because what the mind is processing, what they're seeing is two different things. So then we rewire them again, and then we run them through the scenario. Then they start processing information and engaging. So then we teach them based upon neuroscience. We just picked up the contract with Mossberg.
In regards to bystander and a hard target,
Correct.
or enemy
Correct.
target or dangerous
Yeah.
target. So making those distinctions are very, very important. And so
Very important, especially civilians, you get more scrutinized and you get sued a lot quicker and face charges. So we teach how to process the information and make that quick decision where you're either going to engage or not. Are you going to take that shot or not? You know, so that's a lot of things. And people say, oh, muscle memory. No, it's not muscle memory. It's how we process the information, because all this nerve endings is processing information to your cerebral cortex and that spinal cord where it processes everything. And if you don't teach them the right way, they're going to revert to the old habits of shooting, which they think is saving them, and it's actually not. So a lot of them, they're taking classes with us and they like it, especially women, they like it. It's almost one-on-one with the students. We're well known for the student to instructor ratio. We got 10 students, we got 5 instructors. So, you know, if we got 15 students, we try to have at least 6, 7 instructors, or split it up in relays. We don't shoot 20 people at one time in a line. We seen in the industry, a lot of guys do that practice, but there's no way you could give that attention to that student. What are they doing wrong? How we could help them and all that stuff. Very quickly, we just picked up the contract with Mossberg. We train a lot of private clients. Quite a bit of famous clients have taken our classes and they regularly come and take our classes. And the reason why they come to us is because of the privacy. We give them that privacy. They want to let their hair down, be students, and learn how to be a good shooter. And we got people that, she gave me permission last year, put her on Facebook and Instagram. She's a well-known radio show host, and she loved how our classes are very structured. And she's coming back in September with more friends to take classes with us, because in Puerto Rico, they don't get the same level of training for the women or men. It's mostly a boys only club. So they, with the whole machista attitude.
Right.
So they when she came to us and she was shocked. Yeah, exactly. And they loved it. It was structured. We explained everything. There was no stone unturned. And what we tell our students, and, hey, there's no dumb question. Just raise your hand, ask the question. And it's amazing how we've been very successful to the point that we have our own line of rifles too. And that's, I think, as one of the few training companies that have their own line of rifles and stuff like that.
So I'm not promoting one thing or another, but I always like to give the voice of the veteran. I was just wondering if any audience member was interested in knowing more about you and your company. Can you share some of that information right now before we end?
Yeah, they could go to www.blacksheeptg.com. That's blacksheeptangogolf.com. And they could hit us up in there on Facebook and Instagram. You'll find us there, and whatever questions, we'll answer it. And if we don't know the answer, we're not going to BS you and say, yeah. We'll tell you, hey, we don't know it, or we'll refer you to somebody else. But that's who we are. We're very humble about ourselves.
And this is what I'd like to share with our audience. And, I'm a flowers and, Hawaiian shirt and incense kind of warrior, but don't mistake me if things go down in the wrong way. But largely I'm like that. I'm like the nature boy, but minus Ric Flair. And the thing is, my thing about doing this podcasting, and it goes back to wellness, veteran and military wellness, going back to 2015, Rudy and Matt DeMeo, they all helped me pick up, my first show. It was one of the first pioneering shows where wellness and life worlds in regards to that domain. I always invited folks from all different backgrounds to talk about themselves and without judgment, because what we're doing is to try to understand, not to kind of like feed some type of promotion or pursue some type of propaganda device. I just wanted to get into your life world like everyone else. And I was able to get into that tonight and bring that out with you to our audience. And yeah, I just find it a very fascinating life that you have. And I really appreciate you being here. And if you have any last words, please go.
Yeah, hey, listen, guys, and our brothers and sisters out there, listen, you can make a difference out there. Yeah, if for us, it's taken a time, but we've been making difference a little bit at a time, either serving our community or helping out our brothers and sisters or family members. There's always a mission out there, and our mission, my mission's always been helping out other veterans, either humanitarian wise or other ways. We always have a mission. Please don't forget that, and don't let other things take you away, and don't become part of the statistics. As warriors, I always tell my therapist, I'm a warrior, and I don't believe in taking my own life or doing something else, because I live an honorable, humble life, and that's what warriors are supposed to be. When the war is over, you're supposed to be living an honorable, humble life, and help yourself with others, and in other ways, and starting your own missions.
That's beautifully said. And I am not at all, how could I say it? I'm not at all limited by your words. I've always been touched by the different things that you've said to me, the different things you've done. I've always felt that immediate connection with you. Even if we voted differently, I always felt deeply connected to you because of your character. And that last message that you shared is very much a tall order that is possible for veterans and those tied to the veteran terrain. So thank you so much for being a part of all this. And let's be a part of it again for you to be back again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Angel,
We'll
thank you.
we'll see each other soon.
Roger that.
All right, brother.
Thank you very much. And, join us every week. We've got great folks coming in like Angel, or you'll have some type of commentary on an issue that is within the veteran terrain. And know that at Veteran, etc., we've got the hottest news, the most fulfilling message regarding a cultural awareness regarding the veteran terrain that is very dynamic. And when I say hottest, I mean popping, going back to my Florida street days. But even though there aren't streets there are beaches. And I know Angel would get that because he also did law enforcement in Florida. But that was just something to make him laugh and make all of you laugh. So thank you very much. Take care.
All right, brother.
All right,
Good
brother.
night.
Have a good night.
Veteran Etc. invites you to join us again with your host, Mike Kim, every Sunday. If the content from this podcast is informative to you, please share the podcast with others. Give a like and/or post something you learned from the episode on social media. If interested in other truly informative podcasts like Veteran Etc., check out ComingHomeWell.com for a listing of other veteran-based podcasts. Thank you for tuning in.